Yeah, I like what you're saying about the different properties. It's kind of an idea that I've been throwing around, similarly with a plan that I have in the future.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many more retreats I wanna do, so, like, being grounded in one place will give me the ability just to do it whenever I want, because there is definitely a lot of asks for it. I just don't, have the capacity really until I'm in a permanent location.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Heidi, welcome back to welcome back to the Crucifix Pod for the second time. The first one, we had technical difficulties on our end, so we weren't able to get it out there how we would have liked. But you're here, and you've graced us again by coming back, so we can have a good chat and learn a bit about your story, and what you're doing and the space that you're working in. And I'd really like to dive into that as we kind of move forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Happy to be back, and I always say God's timing is never wrong, so, whatever wanted to stop the last one, this one's the one that's meant to be to happen, so here we are. We're stubborn enough
Yeah.
to keep trying.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely think there's something in that. I listened to the episode that you did with Guy. I just listened to that yesterday. A mutual
Mm.
friend of ours, Guy, who's been on the show twice, and I had all these notes that I want to talk to him about now. I'm like, I got to talk to him about this. I got to talk to him about this. I don't think he's understanding this. It's great.
I love it. He's so awesome, and I'm just so inspired and encouraged by his walk and, his fire for the Lord right now. Yeah, there's so many things as we grow, that will just evolve and, learn more about this constant journey, right? There's things
Mhm.
I'll be like, "I don't remember that." Go back to the Bible, read it again,
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I see that totally different now," so just super excited for him. He's just so awesome and he deserves nothing but the best.
Yeah, he's pretty great.
Yeah, we just ran a Murph event at our gym today, and he donated like the raffle prizes, all his stuff from Western Flyer.
Oh,
It was
I
really
love
cool.
that. I love that. Yeah, he
Yes.
donated some for our event too, and the ladies were just so excited. So I need to follow up with them, make sure they all put their orders in. But yeah, it's just so kind.
Yeah. Um, I'd like to get into your testimony because I heard you just kind of briefly touch on it with Guy, and we spoke about it last time we recorded, but I feel like it might have gone deeper than what we spoke about last time. And it kind of, the last 2 weeks we've released our own testimony episodes. So mine was this past week and Crystal's the week before. And yours almost feels like a merging of the two of ours, which I think is really cool. So if you're willing, open to sharing, we'd love to hear it. And then we'll talk about the Light Ranch and what you're doing there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm always happy to share it. You feel like sometimes you've shared it so many times. You're like, is
Mhm.
this new news to people? Have I said this 5 million times? And sometimes I feel like I say, new pieces of it. I grew up in a family that loved the Lord, and we went to church every Sunday. My father, I think one thing I don't share too often was he was actually a missionary pastor, and we went around to really small towns and started churches. So that was always a piece of my family. But it also, I think, when you're introduced to it and you grow up in it, it kind of becomes, at least for me, not for everyone, a system of checking boxes. And this is just what we do. Like it's just kind of part of your everyday life. And nothing really happened to really grow that relationship or fully like comprehend, I think, in my own capacity. So I kind of just started doing a life a little bit, on my own. And I think there was just various things that happened in my life that kind of drew a gap between myself and the Lord and just didn't really have, like a rooted foundation and relationship with him. Still showed up to church most Sundays, but I think as my adulthood grew, sometimes that was even, other things took priority over that. And then I just kind of got myself into a season. Well, let me take a step back. In college, I had a rape. And so that was just something that I didn't tell anyone about. There was a lot of shame that came along with that. And a lot that just got buried, and that filtered over into a lot of the choices that I made in life, how I viewed myself, how I allowed men to view me, and, friendships and things like that. And so, when you have pain that you have not properly dealt with the Lord, it becomes really rooted in who you are and takes hold, and you cope in ways that are not the best choices is, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
one way to put it. And then in 2022, I have to remember what year. I'm getting old, so I have to like remember what year it is. 2022, it just kind of started to come to the surface. I got divorced in 2019. And within that, I started kind of discovering pieces of myself that would play into where I'm at right now that I didn't understand. So started kind of learning to hunt and this love for the outdoors. And you can stop me at any time too. But
That's
in
good.
in 2022, it just started surfacing, got incredibly dark. Um, so dark that there was probably, I think there was about 4 to 5 months that I had not slept. There was nightmares and, a lot of triggers happening that, like, I couldn't control, and I honestly didn't know what was going on with me. And I wasn't telling anybody about it because 'cause we're so drilled in us to just fix this. Like, it's gonna get over it, move on, those type of
Mm-hmm.
things, but it wasn't going away. Um there was just, like, so much pain, I just wanted to sleep all the time, and I finally got to a point where it's like, I can't live, I can't go on like this, and so I had picked a place on, my local ski hill, a spot that I love that kinda overlooks everything, and I was like, "Leo, that's the place." There was a few times, like, I took my gun with me, in my pack when I went up there, never knowing, like, was that gonna be the day, like, I was able to, like, really go through with it. And I think there was the thoughts, but I think at least for me, there was really never a willingness to wanna do it. I love my boys, and it's really even hard to talk about sometimes that I had those thoughts because I love my kids, I love life, incredibly deeply, but I just didn't know what else to do because I couldn't keep going on, with the intense pain that I had. And God brought people into my life that I didn't even know were not even believers that kind of fed some life and truth into me. And I kind of just realized like I need help. And so um, I started going to a therapist. And one thing that the therapist and I went through was releasing what this person that did to me, over 20 years ago had the hold that he had on me. And so I decided to go to that same spot, and write a letter to him, and take the power back and take what was meant to be a place of death and give it life. And so I wrote the letter, cried it out. I laid back in the snow because this was ski season, and I had to hike back into this spot, and I always tell people it's very cliche, but the clouds parted. I could feel the sun on my face, like the sun broke through, and like all I could feel was the warmth. And in that moment, I just heard God say, like, I'm not done with you. You're going to use your story for purpose. And it was almost as if everything just washed away in that moment. And I made a promise to God in that moment that whatever door you open, wherever you want me, take me, and I will say yes. I feel like that's a good place to pause.
That's pretty good. Um, I'm impressed that immediately it took me 2 years to open that door from a very similar situation. But I understand. Yeah, I got a whole page of notes already, so I'll let you go before I just take over if you got anything.
Yeah, I think just what came to me is maybe there are things that are cliches for a reason, right? Like, that's really beautiful. It's interesting to me. There's a lot of, I guess I would say my testimony that I haven't really shared really with anyone other than a couple people, but certainly not on the podcast of similar experiences when I was young and then going through that phase of making choices that don't honor ourselves, right?
Mhm.
So during that, did you ever feel like you strayed from your sort of Christian path or strayed from the Lord, or was he always kind of there in your mind and in your heart, even during those times?
Um, I will say I never got to a place like I didn't believe he existed. But I didn't necessarily feel his presence.
Mhm.
Um, I prayed to him, I'd cry out to him. I mean, I remember times, on the floor where like it's like your security blanket, the floor, like you can't get up. You
Mhm.
need the floor like attached to you. And I would cry out to him. So I mean, I am very thankful that I never once thought that he didn't exist. I think a lot of me though felt that I was too broken to be fixed and to be
Mm,
loved in any capacity. And I had wronged him. I think a lot of times we feel that we've got to get ourselves together before we come to the Lord, before we come to other people, right?
Mhm.
And his love for us, like I tell people, it's like we can't even really necessarily fathom. Like I think of how much I love my children. And even when I've been so mad at some of the choices that they've made, it's mad because I know the repercussions of that. I know the pain that it's going to cause them. I know the hurt that goes along with that choice, um, and I just wanna take it away from them. So I'm very thankful to say that, I never felt that, but running back to his arms, I just didn't feel worthy enough.
I think that's so common
for sure.
Mhm.
that this thought that we're too broken, that it's like these things that even, I mean, similar, like a rape that happened to you. That's nothing, right? That you did, but those feelings are so strong of
Well,
shame.
yeah, and I think that's the thing is it's overtaken by shame, like,
Mhm.
yeah, that was done, but it took me a long time to really see the reality of the situation. Like, to me, I went there. I chose, in that situation to take this special drink, from, these gentlemen, and so I made all these choices that I was like, "That's my punishment," right? Essentially,
Mm.
that's what I deserved by those choices, and so, um there is so much to say about, like, that shame and that darkness and
Mhm.
us sharing the things that happen and bringing the things that have happened to us to light and those pieces of our testimony. We talked a lot about that at, our my summit that we just held, but allowing that to breathe because the enemy wants it to sit in the dark. He wants it to
Mhm.
stay in the darkness. In the darkness, there's only destruction within ourselves and there's no power to come out of it, but once we start sharing it, people realize, "Oh, I'm not alone. Oh, I don't have to live like this. Oh, I don't have to feel like this. Oh, I can heal from that. Oh, I can do good even after," and so there's a reason he wants it to stay hidden and,
Yeah.
like, make us, our first night at the summit, we share, um, whatever anyone wants to share, but we kinda just say, like, kinda what's on your heart, where you're at, what's happened to you, some of those things, but, quite often I'm like, this is, like, the worst part, like, if you can get through this, you'll make it through the rest of the summit, I promise, but it's that, like, your heart racing, like, I remember there was one time I shared, about the rape. I had been volunteering at, a trafficking organization, and this is where trafficking kinda came into my world. It came across through our church and said if anybody wants to volunteer, so I had started volunteering, but they make you go through this intense, it's not totally therapy because you're not sitting with a therapist, but it is breaking down everything within you because for them, you can't help other people heal if you're not healed. And
Mhm.
so you have to go through all these questions and then these group sessions, and that was a piece of mine, and I remember when they're going around the table, like, I don't even remember what octave, like, my voice was at, like, there was tears and, like, you just, like, can't even control, but, like, your heart's racing, you're sweating, um, saying something that nobody at that table was gonna judge me or, point any fingers, especially in that kind of, environment, but it just really shows what that does to us, like, our bodies, and our minds, and then also I feel like the enemy really just trying to, like, hold you and say, "No," like, "You're
Mhm.
feeling this way, so that means you shouldn't do it." But
Yeah.
it's really the opposite, you're feeling that way, it means you should do it.
And once you get through that, like, I remember, yeah, it was years and years and years before I told anyone about my, um, stories of sexual assault, and it's like one of the scariest things to say out loud. And then once you finally say it, you can feel, but I would say now is like Satan's grip loosening on you because he wants to keep you in that shame so badly.
Oh, 100%. And one of the sorry, my hold on a second. One of the first things I did, and I don't know even, like, I can't even when I look back. So I decided, I don't know what it is I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do something with girls, probably something with trafficking. So I'm gonna redo I had a website where I had started writing about, like, hunting with my boys or going outdoors, just kinda like to blog and write it out. I've always just kind of been a writer, so I was like, I'll, start that. Wasn't really doing anything with it. So I was like, I'll just use that and create a website, and we're gonna do something. I don't know what. And I gave it some name, but, like, one of the first things I had decided to do, and like I said, I don't even know where that looking back, I'm like, I don't know what made me think to even do that as part of it, but it was to tell my story and was to tell what had happened to me. And so I sat in the upstairs of my barn, recorded the video, just in a chair by myself. And um, before released it on, I think it was YouTube, that was all I had. And I think I like posted like a photo of, me in the chair on social. I had 3 teen girls, one of them who's still dating my son. Um, I said, "Will you girls listen to my story? Like, tell me if it's really bad. Like, give me, And so they're like, "You're not gonna sit in here with us?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to hear myself talk. I'm fine." So they sat on my bed, um, and I left them, and it was probably maybe a 10-15 minute video. I don't think it's super long. And they came out and they just wrapped their arms around me. They had tears in their
Mm.
eyes and told me how brave I was. One of the girls is like, that I can't tell you how much that story means to me. And right there in that moment, I was like, okay, this is it. Did the right thing. Like, we're stepping forward. Um, and then, I released it, and I had a friend that I had worked with a few years prior, and she messaged me and she's like, I didn't even know you were going through that. Like, I just thought you were always living your best life. And I'm like, well, we're all pretty good at, hiding it
Mhm.
and living a false, you think social's everyone's truth,
Mhm.
and it's really not at all. There's a whole story behind those screens for each and every one of us. But I think it was, yeah, in that moment that I knew I had done the right thing, and we were just going to continue on.
I'm super curious about like your walk with Jesus through all the different stuff. It doesn't sound like at any point you blamed him. I mean, you were detached, maybe. I don't know. Through the hardest parts, is there ever a time where you're like, why are you doing this to me? Like, why me? Why have you chosen this path, or why have you dealt me this hand?
Um, I mean, there has probably been moments of various situations. I don't think of it so much, I think back then. I think I would say like, "Woe is me," why is this happening to me? Those type of things. But I think deep down, I knew I'd made a lot of choices, and I had, my sin, a lot of it was the repercussions of my sin, right?
Mhm.
You know, things I allowed, and so pieces of that, like, I can't expect this peaceful life when I'm not honoring the Lord. Like, they don't go hand in hand, and, we don't want these bad things to happen, and you do, even when you are following the Lord, you love the Lord, you get dealt some nasty hands, right? Like, it doesn't our life is never peaceful. We're never promised this good and easy life. Um and I would say there have been moments where I'm just angry, and sometimes I'm like, "Am I angry at you?" And I probably have been, um, but I know he loves me, and so I think more so it was just this anger at myself, I think, more than anything. Like, I think
Mhm.
that's where, like, not forgiving yourself and blaming yourself and just feeding that heaviness and those lies to yourself, I think I lived more in that than at anyone else. And that is still probably one thing and I may the rest of my life that I deal with, that those lies for the enemy, when you have fed yourself those things for over 20 years, they don't magically, unfortunately, go away.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question is how do you work with that? Like, um, because I certainly am am not wanting to blame any victims and myself included. Um, like my first sexual assault was when I was really little. It was by a pediatrician. But as a result of that, as a result of a lot of things, I was making choices that weren't honoring God, certainly, or myself. And so subsequent situations, right? Like where oftentimes the decisions I made put myself in situations that allowed these things to happen. And it's, yeah, how have you worked through forgiving yourself for that?
Um, I think a lot of it, I think I'm harder more so, I would say now on choices maybe that I don't make that I feel like we're the best or there's things that I can't really surrender, I still try to control. I think I struggle more with that now, but throughout the walk, I feel like it is truly as far as the east is from the west, right? We are forgiven and we have to remind ourselves of truth. And I think it's continuing to feed truth and having, I think for me, community has changed my world. Because my community, we've all done things, right? Like all of us women have done things that we're not proud of. We've made choices, but we come back to each other in love and correct in love and help hold each other accountable. You know, you can't do anything about the choices you've made in the past. They're done. Um God has forgiven you as long as you've gone and you've repented of him, like he's forgiven you. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve what his purpose is for you to continue to carry those things. I watched a video a long time ago of it was a I think they do like skits and stuff, but he had a suitcase and he's like on stage and like things are happening and every time he's like putting these rocks in the suitcase, you know? And so eventually, he gets to like his adult life and he has like a backpack now, he has the suitcase, all these things that he's rolling around with him everywhere he goes. And it was just a really good, like, visual reminder that, like, when we give it to the Lord, like, we drop those things. We don't carry those things anymore. Um, do we have those moments? Sure. But I think it's the more you continue in prayer and root yourself in the Lord. And I tell people, chase Him like your life depends on it because it actually does. And if you, like, seriously go after Him, like, those things start to fall away. Does something try to bring it up? Oh, absolutely, and now I kinda see it for what it is. The enemy's trying to get me to, you know, look back and be like, "Oh, you're still that person," or "You still remember you did that?" They'll pop up now, and I'm like, it's ridiculous. Just leave me alone." Like
I've got better things to do.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
and it's, like Lot's wife, right? You just have to not look back. I don't wanna be the pillar of salt. I wanna look to the future and just continue to just focus on the future, and let the past fall away. Um, it's not easy for sure because we've all had some really tough choices, but, I mean, you hear the testimonies of people in prison, people that have murdered people, and people that have forgiven people, like, that have murdered a family member, things like that. And I'm like, gosh, like if they can do that, I can forgive myself and I
Mhm.
can let those things go because the more you hold on to that, it's not going to serve your future self.
Yeah, there's something in that, um, with not being able to really serve God's purpose either. And it's a conclusion that I came to. We talked about this last week, but I was involved in an abortion 20 years ago, and like it just ate me up for 2 decades. But it occurred to me that like if He has forgiven me for it, and I can't forgive myself, then I'm putting myself above Him, which is just absurd. And so, yeah, my eventually that was my reasoning because I work kind of logically, and my logical reasoning was like, if He has forgiven me, then who am I to not forgive me? Like, I don't have time for this. Like, He's got work for me to do, and if I'm going to bury myself in this shame and guilt, I can't, I can't go and make amends and make the world better.
Yeah, exactly. Lisa Turkers is one of my favorite authors and speakers, and she had an abortion, and if you think about it, like, if she had relished in that, I mean, she's got a global ministry, in the lives that she's changing through women, like, she would never have fulfilled, the purpose that God had for her, and I think too, like, as I wrote my book and things like that, I realized, like, how much we idolize the things that we've done sometimes
Mm,
too, and this
Mm,
becomes, like, this thing that's at the forefront, like, "Oh, I did this," and you're just constantly like, you think you're constantly thinking about it, and you're constantly focused on it, like, you're idolizing a little bit. If I can't surrender that and let go, it's kind of become an idol in some capacity, and so that's something that, when that happens, I'm like, "Okay, I've gotta deal with that," and it happened, recently, like, there's just things that have come up, and I'm like, why is this constant in my mind? Why am I holding on to this? I'm like, there's some kind of idol I've created in that situation or, that feeling or that person that I need to remove because it's taking the place of what God's truth is.
that's fascinating. I've never really thought about it from that perspective. Like we think when we idolize things that they're always, I don't know, like not the negative things so much. Like we might idolize our children or we might idolize our
mhm.
parents or we might idolize a sports star. And even though they're all just as bad, we don't think that we're idolizing what we would see as
Ourselves.
the negative parts of ourselves, like
It
idolizing an abortion or idolizing a divorce or idolizing a rape. Like it's really interesting.
Yeah, and, I don't know that it's, like, the right wording or anything, but,
Yeah, it's in a
that was
different,
the best
yeah,
I could, like, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm, like, idolizing my pain. Like, if I
yeah.
can't
Yes.
let go of this pain that somebody did to me, like, I have to have it almost. I have to think about it all the time, it becomes I've kinda learned through fasting. I never fasted until this last year, and, I do it on the regular now, and so it's kind of, like, revealed these things that I'm like, "Gosh,
Hmm.
I'm thinking about that more, or I can't, like, move on, or I can't, just let that go." I'm kind of idolizing that situation in some capacity, and so it's revealed a lot of those things to me, and that's the best way I can kind of, like, encompass, um, like, what it is to me, I guess, is that it's become an idol.
I
Fasting's
love
an awesome
that.
way to really reveal that stuff
Yeah.
because you realize, like, oh my god, all I'm doing is thinking about something so meaningless.
And yourself, like,
Yeah, yeah, and it's like
yeah.
what you realize when you fast for any great period of time, you start to realize like every time my body harps for this one thing, I just give it to it. And it's like, that's not any way to live. You would never try to raise a child that way. You would never want your child to like, every time you have a desire, get it. But we
Right.
do it with food and then it just creeps into other areas of our lives. And by fasting from food, you quickly realize, man, I'm just like a slave to my urges.
Yep, 100%. Like, I have to have this thing. It's revealed so much of that stuff, and I'm like, "Gosh, thought I was a lot better on top of this than I actually am," but, and then when I fail too during some of my fasts, because I have, I'm like, "Lord, you knew I wasn't, like, mentally there," but, it reveals, it doesn't, it's not about, like, shaming myself or saying, but it reveals, and so I'm like, I've got to spend some time in prayer on that. I've gotta, talk with the Lord a little bit more about that, read his word a little bit more and be like, "Okay, what is going on within me that I'm not willing to release this?" Because there's so much, like, you go through anything and be like, "Could you give that up?" If you can't give it up, it's, to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
some capacity an idol. And there's a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
that we couldn't give up.
Clearly, God's either been writing it from the start or he's at least taken what was meant for evil and used it for good. And that's now puts you in a very unique position to be able to do what it is you do with the light ranch, which we will talk about soon. But how was there a point where you were like, oh, I see, like I see either why this occurred or how it's being used for good, and then what was that like?
I mean, I feel like that's literally an ongoing, story that's happening that I'm like, "Oh, oh," and we had a lot of those at the summit, um, that occurred just based on how people came and some of the interactions. I feel like from me going to the organization to volunteer for trafficking, that seed was planted, and my passion around trafficking and trafficking survivors. That was back in 2011. And my dear friend, she helped host all of our devotionals at the summit. We just met a few years ago by chance, me walking into a booth at an event. But as her and my relationship has grown, she was at a different event in 2011 and trafficking was placed on her heart as well. And so God's just been weaving these stories together. I didn't grow up hunting. I grew up camping. We didn't have a lot of money, so like we did the free things. So we were outdoors a
Mhm.
lot. Um, but in 2020, my son wanted to learn to ski, and then he wanted to learn to hunt. And so I was like, okay, I got to learn to do this. And these have become my passions. Um, and that is become part of what this whole purpose is getting people outdoors because I'm very passionate about conservation in the outdoors because I think it saved my life. During that time after I was like, okay, I'm going to get help and things like that, I went up to the ski hill for I think 30 days straight. I think they closed one day. Um, but it was like 30 days straight I was up there skiing because it was the one place like my anxiety went away. It was the one place, like, my mind shut off. When I was home, everything was loud. I just wanted to sleep, and so I would listen to, like, motivational messages on the way up to the ski hill, and then I would spend time up there, and so, um, just reminded me that God created the world for a reason. There's so many elements within the outdoors that is for our healing, things that our bodies need, and sunshine and, fresh air, all those things. It's like He gave us
Mhm.
the remedy, we just
Mm.
choose not to use it, half the time, or we use it incorrectly,
It's almost
and
like he designed it for a purpose.
isn't that crazy? Uh,
Mhm.
but the more I've been on this journey, the more I've realized that and watched what it can do for people too, and just even besides just like, sitting and meditating and being in prayer or just the fresh air is the empowerment piece that comes and watching I've been able to watch women, as well as myself, when I solo hunt, I'm like, if I can like do that hard thing, why can I not get through this? Like, and so
Mhm.
you just watch them become more and more empowered. I sat with a girl, went to coffee that was at the summit, and it was our first time meeting. And she's like, I did really hard things this weekend. And to me, I was like, these were no big deal, but to her, like, these are things way
Mhm.
out of her element and things and, like, she just had this light in her eyes, and she realized, "I can do so much more than I've given myself credit for," and, like, how much we tell our minds tell us, like, "You're not capable of doing that, you can't do that." So that path with the outdoors, it's just, like, I feel like it's almost unstoppable what the Lord can do once we
Mm.
place in those elements.
Well, something our pastor told me once that I love is that God's plan is never brokenness, but gosh, can he make beauty out of it?
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I'm just reminded of in your story. Like his plan was never brokenness, but wow, like so much beauty has come out of this for you and for all of the women you're working with. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it is a blessing and it's still hard. You hear some of the stories that, I've heard some of these teen girls and these adult women, things that they're currently going through or they've gone through. Um it breaks my soul, right? It's
Mhm.
hard to hear and I know, part of the trafficking and hearing those stories because that stuff is extreme. You cannot unhear those things, but I know that was preparing me in the long run to be able to take in the capacity, but I remind them, like, while the things that happen to us are not good, it is his plan is always good, and so it will
Mhm.
lead to his goodness, if we allow it, but you just have to continue to keep your eyes fixed on him.
And that must be a hard thing, I'm wondering, to talk to those women who have been through those horrific experiences to move through that sort of like idolization of their experience. Have you kind of worked through that with others as well?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. I think the thing that I have to remember always is that I am not anyone's savior. As
Mhm.
Mm.
much as I just want to, like, fix people, I'm very much that way, like, that's just my personality. I can't carry the weight for other people. Um, Still learning on that, that can be hard, because 'cause I've definitely spent time in prayer and tears, for people, but, I think it's just teaching them and guiding them to the Lord and avenues of surrender, and leaving those things at the cross. That was one thing we did at the summit, and so there's just so much power, just like I wrote that letter, you have to, like, let it go at some point, and everyone has to do it when they're ready. You cannot force people. There's just so many people that, right, they're going through the thick of it, and you're like, "Just do this." And they're just not ready, and
Yeah.
you have to give them the space for the Lord to be like, "Lord, they're yours in your timing." Um, you know, let them, get to that place and pray for them, but when they are, it's just like I said, the writing that letter, and then I think I left out that we took that letter once I was done and we burned it. And so there was something just really beautiful and just, seeing it in ash and just saying, "Okay, that power is now mine. What you took is now mine." And, I think it was Lisa TerKeurst. There was some speech she was giving, and I've read a lot of books on hers on forgiveness. And, the more you just like hold on to it, it's just they've done it to you once. You're continuing to almost let them
Mm.
do it again and again, the more you hang on to it.
Tell us about the Light Ranch, how it got the name, what it is that you guys do.
Yeah, like I said, when I started and changed my website, I kind of like threw a name. It was actually called Project EO, which was Encounter Outdoor, which was the name that I had kind of named my blog, just my encounters outside and everything. And so that was the name, but I just kind of threw something like it was a dart at a wall, like hoping it would stick. And it just never really felt right. And so things were kind of starting to evolve as to like, Lord, what do you want me to do? And like I said in the beginning, like everything he kind of just placed on my heart, I was like, hey, if you place on my heart, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to step out in faith and, just let you lead. And so there was a idea to do a summit. And then there was also this idea of like, I want a place where I can bring people. I want a place where I can allow them to come heal outdoors. Um, I think one good turning point was for me, I went back to that organization, last February, not this in 2025. Um, they went from one facility that had 8 beds back in 2011 to now have 3 facilities. One is for ages 4 to 11, and then 12 to 17, maybe 13 to 17, and then 18 and over. So I was able to go back and tour their 18 and over facility. And I think one thing that really stuck with me is this is in like downtown, like city of Phoenix. And so I'm walking through this, it's so hot. It's like 100, 10 degrees too. It's Phoenix. So there's nothing relaxing about that. But I'm like walking on this outdoor facility, and they're showing me everything they're doing, which they're doing incredible things. But the whole time I could hear the cars going by, like just the noise of the city. And I'm like, how does anyone heal in this? Like, how do you like turn your mind off when there's just that? Like, I'm not capable of it. And so the ranch, the idea of the ranch is really just a place that is just calm and peaceful, and people can connect with his creation and then do activities that empower them. And everyone connects with something different. I think it's super important to connect with something that makes you feel empowered and that, kind of arises passion, whether it's fishing, hunting, archery, skiing, all the things. Like I don't care what, and I love everything outdoors, so I'll take anybody to do anything. Um, but when I was back at that facility, there was one story. They had one survivor that did not speak. Um, the pain and trauma from what was done to her while she was trafficked was just so deep that she couldn't speak. Like I can't even imagine. Like I think of my pain and how I could, barely function. I'm like, that's deep. Like that's
Mhm.
deeply rooted. But they started a garden And once she was able to put her hands in the earth and watch something grow, she became to feel empowered and she began to speak. And I was just like, that is like exactly what he intended for, right? Like,
Mhm.
that to me was just such a powerful vision of what, I want the ranch to be. Um, and so I don't have a facility yet. I'm trusting on God's timing for that. But in the meantime, what we've been doing through the ranch is just bringing women together to um, build a community of women that have faced various forms of trauma. Long term, I want to help trafficking survivors in some capacity. Also, veterans are very much on my heart. So, those are two things that we want to do at the facility. But right now, holding summits, I hold like an archery night as things come up that I'm able to do, just bringing our community together. And bringing new people in. And then we also host Bible studies every week. And so it's been pretty awesome. We held our first summit last year, and then we just finished our second one this year. We had um, 20 of us that were together at our summit last week.
And I saw your baptism video. How many women ended up being baptized?
Oh, I'm going to try not to cry. Um, there
Crying's
was
welcome.
Thanks. I did enough of that over the last 2 weeks. No, I don't know that how do I have any left is what I'm like. There was 10. I actually, one of our
Wow.
girls, there, and you talk about, God writing a story. There's a girl, we worked together. We were just coworkers. We both work remote. And last year, we couldn't remember if she joined the Bible study. She was, going through a hard time, or if she came to the summit. They were all pretty close together either way. Um, and, through that, she's just come to love the Lord. And she made a decision, this last year to get baptized. And she's just such a light and she's grown so much. It's just been so awesome to watch her journey of faith. And she's like a different woman. I'm like, you are a different, like physically, mentally, emotionally, you're a different person. Um, but craziest story is she started going to a church locally, had told them she wanted to get baptized, and they did not reach back out.
Mm.
Little
It wasn't
failure.
meant to happen. It wasn't God's plan for
Yeah.
her to get
No, it
baptized then
wasn't.
with them.
And she
Yeah.
said that. And so she had said, I said, hey, like I think I threw it out there jokingly. Be something that I was like, that would be amazing. I don't know that I'll ever be given that opportunity. And so she's like, no, I want to do it. And then I told another one of the ladies who has just come to the same thing. She came out to the summit last year, didn't know anyone. She's like, I want to do it. And she started crying. And then this other one that we met, hopefully she doesn't get upset that I tell her story, but she'll be fine. Last year, we went to a little shop, and the girl that hosts the devotionals, she's like, she will make friends with anyone. She's talking to them. The next thing I know, we're walking over to some ranch to see some horses. And so we walk over and she meets this little firecracker of a woman who I can't remember if she's in her 80s, but she's like rodeo queen. Like she's broken like 80 bones. She's done like all these like this like the historic thing. Like she's known woman. But her granddaughter's there. And so her granddaughter came to the summit, and she later on told me, it's funny, I prayed to the Lord that morning to bring me a community of women. And I'm like, and then 16 showed up at your front door. Like, how crazy is our God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she came to so we've had a relationship, via phone over the last year. And so she came to the summit and she told me that she wanted to get baptized. And so we were up there for those 3. And, we had been doing some deep work and talking about some things. And then they just kept coming up. And so we were like screaming and like, what
That's
is happening? So there was 10. And it was the most incredible experience. I'm so proud of these women. And, for some, it was just a full surrender of, things in their life. And so it was just some of it was a rededication to the Lord. And um, that summit was just incredibly powerful, I think, for each of us, and things that we left and just a renewed sense of peace, and God's hand has really been in this community. Um, and like I said, the way we have met, and I told the one I went coffee with, I says, because they said, "Oh, great job being obedient, Heidi." Like, and I don't like praise, but I says, my obedience doesn't make a difference without the rest of your obedience, because the girl from work told the girl that I went to coffee with about this and brought her. Some other people brought other people. So it's all of us that are having an impact for the Lord. And it really does take all of us.
Making heaven crowded.
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
So cool. Outside of your children, is there a better feeling than being part of the reason for somebody's baptism than being involved in the actual physical act?
It was surreal. Like I didn't necessarily know what to expect. In a lot of ways I don't feel deserving or worthy. Um I just give the Lord credit. I have a really hard time, like, um, you know, taking, like I said, compliments and things like that. I'm just so honored to watch what He's doing in this circle and in the lives of others, and just posting it and sharing it. The people reaching out, like somebody's like, "Where? How do I come to this ranch?" And I'm like, "Well, there is no branch technically yet, but it reminds me there is a hunger right now. There is a
Yeah.
hunger for
Mhm.
something different. There's a hunger for the Lord. There's a hunger for peace. And so when people see that, they want to know, like, how do I get that? What is that? And I just trying really hard not to cry, but I just feel so blessed by the Lord to like be given these opportunities.
Mhm.
And I just pray every day that I steward it the way that He wants me to.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think that kind of links back to something you mentioned earlier. He he clearly wants you doing this work, and you're stepping into it. You kind of talked about the box checking Christian, and clearly that's not what you're doing now. But do you feel like there's a gap there where people are missing out on what you're experiencing because they're just checking the box and they're not immediately stepping into callings?
Um, I think I think there's two pieces to that, because we just talked about that in our Bible study. Because I've had a few weeks where I like feel like I'm checking the box, right? I get up,
Hmm.
do my devotional, like have my coffee. Um, but what I told them is I think we have periods of time where there are some checking boxes, but I feel like the dangerous piece is when we stop showing up to check any box, because it
Mm.
really starts to widen that gap, and it gives the room, and the door opens a little bit for the enemy and for temptation. So, I think even though you're sometimes may feel like you're checking a box, there is a sense of obedience still showing up. But you have to pray on it too, I feel like, and say, Lord, this is how I'm feeling. Why? Can you reveal to me? And sometimes that's where like fasting, and switching to, and doing a fast comes in.
Like I get frustrated at the people in the men's group, particularly where they'll be like, God never talks to me, but they're not doing anything.
Mm.
Like they're passive Christians, and it frustrates me because this message is so important. And then people are like, "Oh, I feel uncomfortable telling somebody about God." I was like, so they're gonna Guy always says, he's
Yeah.
like, "All my friends who are believers never said anything. You're just gonna let me burn in hell? Like, you got to tell me." And so it's the gospel. It's the good news. Like it's our
That's our
he
duty.
tells us that we are to,
Yeah.
share the gospel to all like nations and people. And so the passivity like drives me mad.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Um, yeah, and I don't know that I know the answer to that, right? We talked a little bit about that. We talked about the nudges from God and saying yes, and in that, the obedience of what He's maybe pushing or calling you to either let go of, or the action that He wants you to take. We can be obedient, like I said, of showing up to church and feeling like that's enough. But He calls us to be disciples. He calls us to go and share that, like all of us. It's not like He
Mm,
called you Now, he doesn't
Mhm.
call each of us to go start a ranch or a
Right.
ministry.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
do that in the capacity of whatever our job is or whatever we feel our purpose is.
And season
Um,
of life,
yeah,
right? Like
that's
someone who has a
mhm.
newborn baby, their season of life is not gonna be to like travel across the world and, maybe do something, but
Yeah, and like, I think for me, like one thing, I'm thankful even when my boys were young, is I taught them to see people. And I feel like we become so checking boxes that we stop seeing other people. And and that's wherever I'm at. And so I have to ask myself sometimes, am I shining his light wherever I go? Do
mm,
I have the ability to bless someone or see someone wherever I'm at in that day? Like, I may not be doing anything for the ranch today, but I am out shopping. And you might see someone that looks upset or has been crying, or, and it's very easy just bypass and not say anything or do anything. Or the homeless person. I hear a
Mm.
lot of people like, I don't want to give them money. They're going to go buy, booze. Well, they might. Maybe don't give them money, but at least maybe see them in that moment. My boys have walked up with me and said, "Hey, can we buy you, lunch or, anything? Is there anything I can go in the store and purchase for you?" Um, and so take those opportunities and those nudges. Things always cross all of our minds, and I'm trying more and more to listen to those and act on those. Or somebody crosses your mind, you're at home. I should check on them. I should
mhm,
text them.
Yeah.
Those are the nudges that I'm like, okay, maybe God's telling me. Like I randomly text people. I'm like, I'm so awkward. Like I'm really good at being awkward now. And I'll just be like, "Hey, praying I just said a prayer for you. I'm praying for you. Or is there something I can pray for you today? You came
mm,
across my heart." Um, those are some of the obedience that we can all do that is shining his light and, is doing those things. But if you're not spending time in prayer, and I'm learning more and more that people do not spend time in prayer, um,
Hmm.
and that becomes a one-way relationship, or spending time in his word, then you've really gotta start doing that and figure out maybe why you're not doing that. But I definitely get what you're saying about I'm
Was I
guilty of
telling
that before.
was I talking to you recently or Christian? But with the obedience thing for me started like that as well because I would whatever I would have an urge to send somebody a text or a song would come on and something inside of me, which I now attribute to the Holy Spirit, was saying, send this song to this person, and I just would or like whatever. But then it got to a point where I was like I'm like, listen to these things and just see what happens. And that's for me, it kind of started there. So at one moment I'm like, oh, for whatever reason, the Holy Spirit is telling me to send this song that I'm hearing to this person. And I just start to actually do these little things. And then it led to the bigger things, like being called on mission trips or whatever. Like, but it started with just being obedient to little things first. And I think that's people are waiting for this grandiose calling, but you he you've got to be trusted with a little to be trusted with a lot. Jesus tells us that. And
mhm,
so he who can be trusted with a little will be given a lot. And so I think to shoot for the grandiose is kind of a mistake that people make and they miss these little like send that song to that person or they came across your heart, text them, say, hey, you were in my dream or I was just thinking about you. I want to check in. Like that's where it started for me. And then it really quickly escalated into much bigger things.
Yeah, I think yeah, there's 2 things, like I said, when this started and I said, "Lord, if you open a door, I've gotta say yes." Like, I'm really honestly like I'm on this I only say spectrum because it has other references, like, but of introvert, like I'm 50% introvert. Like me, like I've done it for jobs because that's what my career is, but like I don't like to public speak. I don't like, I'd rather just be in my little bubble.
Mhm.
But I had to let go of some of that and just be comfortable getting uncomfortable. And, I think people also worry too much about what other people think. And I think
mhm,
the older I get, I care a little bit less, and then I also am like, "Gosh, if I go tomorrow, like, what was I so worried about?" Why was I letting that stop me? And, I love to hear, like, inspiring stories, and I love, like, inspiring movies of people that just went against the norm and just did things because they were so passionate about it, because those are the ones that truly, like, that's how we have that ripple effect, and that's how we change the world, by just saying yes to things and then not stopping and kind of drowning out the noise around you, because there will always be noise. I still have
Always.
noise. And you have to, and not that it doesn't get to you at moments, but when that noise arises, I can watch my obedience go down, and I can watch me, like, pulling back and trying to live small again. And he's like, no, that's not what I'm telling you to do. And so I have to sometimes, I mean, you almost want to throw up and just do it and just say, okay, like, I'm going to rip the band aid off and do it and get it over with.
And you're all
Um,
like, you're always glad you did,
yeah,
right?
for the most part.
For the most part. But like scripture tells
You
us, don't conform to the patterns of this world.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
y
not what we're.
yeah, like, you sometimes still, like, feel, and you can start to doubt, and, like, I say almost, because you can still have those things going on in your
Mhm.
head. But if I look at, I went from no connection to, like, the hunting world or anything, and the relationships and the things that God has opened, like, my life is completely different. And I'm so grateful, like, the opportunities I've had, and things like that. Like, I don't take that for granted. But had I just continued to live small and be like, no, I don't want to be awkward. And I say it all the time. I'm like, I'm awkward. Like, we were talking, one of the girls that came to the summit that comes to my Bible study, she's like, we were at a total archery challenge event, and she's like, "You came up to me in the bar." And I was like, "That's right." Like, everybody was there, and I was just like, I don't know, I've got to meet you. And, I'm just awkward. And
I'm
so,
with you, Heidi. I'm awkward too.
but it is what it may not be everyone's cup of tea. That's fine. But it now, look at, like, she's one of my dearest friends and things like that. Like, had I just been like, and it's also, like, to say, like, those regrets. You regret the things you didn't do.
Mhm.
And I have things that I regret that I was like, I wish I would have done that. And I could probably still, name a few, but those are getting smaller and smaller. And if it doesn't work out or something doesn't come from it, there's usually no harm, no foul.
Yeah, I never would have known, or I wouldn't have called it like the Holy Spirit or anything, but my whole life I've always been someone who just like, if if I'm called to tell someone something, I'll just tell them that. Like, whether that's, gosh, you're beautiful, or like, I love you, or whatever it is. Like, I just, my whole life, I haven't really had a hard time with that. And it's been recently that a few things have come back to me that, are just little things that I've said and I would have never even remembered it. But that people have told me, like, that saved me, or
Mm.
that changed my life for where I was at. And for me, it was just like a little nothing. I wouldn't have even remembered it. Um, and so I just think there's so much power in just saying what we're being called to say by the Holy Spirit, or what's on our hearts, because whatever, it might be awkward, or some people might think you're a weirdo, but you also never know who could be helped
Yeah.
by
And
those things. And I've
yeah.
always just felt like, why keep goodness like that inside? Why not share it?
I think a lot of people, what I've come to learn is they don't know what to do with love and kindness anymore.
Mhm.
And, you know, just showing that, for the most part, if you're coming with pure intentions, right, and that's what you're trying to give someone, people appreciate it, but they almost,
You're like,
if they,
what are you up to? What's your
yeah, like, there's
motive here?
gotta be some, ulterior motive, or they've never even received it,
Yeah,
from
they maybe don't know
anyone
what to do with it.
authentically, that we really just don't know what to do with it. That people, for the most part, a lot nowadays, they push it away, because that's easier than, maybe, at some point it's gonna go away, or I'm gonna find out, what they really, want from me. But, that's so powerful, what, you just saying that, you don't know what those seeds are doing, or where somebody truly is in that moment. And I've gotten, some messages like that through social, like, I share a post and somebody's like, and they send me, like, "I needed this today. You don't know," like, and I'm just like, gosh, there was, like, doubts in my head about sharing that, because I figured I was ranting, or, and so it truly, is, about quality sometimes over quantity, and about if it helps one person, then it is definitely worth it. We get so fixated, in society on numbers and being this big, huge, like it's either got to be this or it's, I don't want it. But really, one person and that person can change another person. And
Mhm.
there's just so much more going on than we can even fully comprehend. You saw it like with Phil Robertson when he passed away, and they talked about the number of people that his life has impacted. Like his obedience and what he shared with one just, filtered out to so many other thousands. Like, and I'd love to see what that like sea of people look like. Just because, I mean, the man was just straightforward about his love for Jesus and, didn't necessarily go around knocking on doors or anything, but like changing one life continued to change so many others.
Yeah, you just have no idea the impact you're making. I witnessed a really cool story of that recently. I went out on a mission trip with one of the elders at the church, and he he had it's a long story, but he had been to this little tiny town in Afghanistan, and back in the 80s, and we're in Pakistan, and we go into this like store thing, and we're at the back drinking chai. And there's this guy who's sitting across from us, and he's kind of just looking at us, not at me, but mainly at David, who I'm with. Um, and I'm trying to guess his age, and he's looking about my age, like early to mid 40s. And then he says to Dave, he's like, "Do you know who I am?" And David had been there for 40 years. And he's like, "You look familiar." And he said, "When you came to whatever this little town was, you gave me a Bible when I was 5." He's like, "It changed my life." And it's like, he didn't see him for 40 years. He didn't know that he changed that kid's life for 40 years. And then to find that out, I was like
See?
mind blown,
Those are the things you're just like, "Only God. Only
right?
God."
Mhm.
It just
Yeah.
it blows my I continue more and more to, like, have those moments, and I'm just like, "What is happening? Like, what is
Mhm.
happening, God?"
It's
Like,
God.
it's crazy, but it's almost like, it's just almost, like, too hard to, like, wrap your brain around, and there's just
Hmm.
probably thousands of those kind of moments that we'll
Yeah.
never
And how
know
many,
of.
exactly. That's so important to think about.
Yeah,
Um,
because I mean, you might have and that's, when I go back to, like, saying I want to see people, there could be somebody that checkout person that they wanna go home and end their life that day, and you were the one person that looked them in the eyes, asked
Mhm.
how their day was, and so you'll never know that, right? But you hear of those things all the time,
mhm.
um, and
It's
you just don't I've told some of the girls, like, I think of my own darkness, but God was there, like, and I knew he was there. Like, I can't it's hard for me to fathom the person in the darkness that does not even know the Lord
yeah.
at all, and I'm like, "That's heavy, and that's a little scary to me," and so it's like breaking a little crack in there of light to show them, what is on the other side of the darkness that they're in.
There's there's been so many incidents on the listening to the Sean Ryan podcast where the guest will be it's so common that they're like, "Yeah, I was about to kill myself, and then this person called me. Right as I was about to shoot myself, this person called me." And like, it happens so often that if we're not making that call when we
Mhm.
get that feeling to call somebody, you don't know what's on the line.
Mhm. The Eddie Penny, I think it is. I don't know if
Hmm.
you've listened to his. That one is
Yeah,
incredibly powerful, and the way he represented the light coming and shining on him, I felt like I was listening to my story, when he, just felt the Lord's presence and, his life kind of do that shift. But he talks, so I think about those moments where you start to see that God was there all along, and trying to get our
intervene.
attention and save us. But how often we just don't, like you said, listen to those nudges and follow through with what the Holy Spirit is telling us to do.
Yeah, and I almost see it as like that's the point. That's God's point of desperation, where He's reaching other people. It's like get in. If you stuff try to reach Him, and He ain't listening, so I need like I'm gonna throw everything at this, and that's why yeah, it just makes me think like if I ever have that unexplained or inexplicable urge to just call somebody or text them, then
You do
nothing
it.
is lost by doing it.
Mm-mm.
No, I've had so many, even now, um, and the girls will be like, "Oh my gosh, how did you know?" Like,
Mhm.
I'll just be like, "What do you need today?" Like, "I need to pray for you. What you got?" Or, just something short and little, and it's just the right timing, right? And, um, I think the closer our community grows too, you feel those things, and, um, you know that the Holy Spirit has really just connected us, and just that's what we have to do in those moments, and they do it for me too. How many times that they've just said, "What do you need? I wanna pray for you. What can I do?" Those type of things, and that to me, you know, there can be a lot of weight, doing ministry and things like this, that you start to carry it all yourself, and, I have to remember that that's what the Lord has created here, is for us to rely on each other. We were never, ever meant to do life alone, and you think He says it in Genesis, like, he wasn't meant to do life alone, and so the outdoors and community are, like, the 2 vital
Mm.
pieces, of what He's been building, through the Light Ranch.
That's cool. Um, Two really powerful things that you spoke on. I want to talk about the contrast, truth and empowerment. But I want to talk about the false truth and the false empowerment, because something you mentioned with Guy, but I don't know that he likes to get into this stuff, but I definitely do. So like the trafficking and the OnlyFans and the porn industry and these things where there's this false empowerment of women that's
Mm.
causing like a world that we don't recognize anymore.
Yeah, I have such a hard I'm a very independent woman, and I think, my dad always he raised me like, "You wanna do it? You can do it," and so, um but I think it's a dangerous and very slippery slope, as we think that as women, empowerment means giving up our bodies and
Mm,
Mhm.
showing more of our bodies. I know it's not definitely a popular trait, but I think, at the root of it, you have to look at, "Okay, why do I want to do this? What am I trying to gain?" And if you're trying to gain money, that's an idol. If that's what it is all about and that's what your focus is, you definitely have idols above the Lord. But, empowerment is about realizing your worth of who God
mm,
created you to be and the purpose that He's given you, and that the lies that have been fed to you, or the things that have happened, I'm thinking of empowerment in the sense that those don't define who I am, and those do not stop me from doing other things. I think that's what the enemy wants, right? If he
mm,
can make me feel less empowered, I'm not going to live out the purpose that God had for me, and I'm not going to, you know, make an impact for his kingdom. So he'd like to keep us stuck in that. But, as women, we've gotten to this place that our worth is tied to our bodies. And it breaks my heart, like what these young girls go through now. Like, I didn't have that in high school. It was hard enough in high school. So I
yeah.
cannot imagine just the standard that they have to live up to, and their bodies, and it's this porn. Guy and I talked a little bit when I was down in Colorado when we did his podcast. It is driving force. The porn industry is fueling trafficking, it is
Yeah.
fueling
Big
the
time.
identity of women, it is fueling
Mhm.
nothing good. um
Nothing.
and so it just, and you go on social, and it's hard because, I mean, I've got boys that are young men, they're adults, they have social and things like that, but I'm like, sometimes I go on there and I'm like, this is like soft porn. Like,
Mhm.
what is happening right now? Like, at every turn it's thrown in, and not that it doesn't happen to women also, but for men, like, it's thrown in their face, right? Like,
Mhm.
this is what women are, this is how we should look at them. Um And
Oh, we
so
even see that like in the CrossFit space, there's really strong, amazing CrossFit athletes that are trying to sell some like magnesium powder, but they're doing it, like in their bikini.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm like,
yeah,
by no means above this. So I don't want the people that are listening to think that I'm judging, but every industry has become that. So now the
right.
golfing pages are just girls in tiny skirts and boots hanging out.
Mhm.
The CrossFit pages have become that. But like, you're even seeing this switch over because people see a trend. And so they're seeing
Right.
that this rebirth of Christianity is kind of kicking in. So now the same girls who are going and taking videos in the clubs wearing not many clothes are now wearing not many clothes with a
Mhm.
crucifix. And it's like, it just gets into every industry. And so your
Right.
social feed just becomes, like you said, like it's the same thing. The energy behind it's the same.
Yeah, and it's hard too because you realize what we've created because, I've had people I'll be in jeans and a t-shirt, and they'll make comments that I'm doing something incorrectly, and I'm like, What do I wear?"
Mhm.
yeah.
What do you even like as a woman? Because then, you're shame that you had the wrong intent here, and so it's just like this, like the noise is, too much when it comes to that. But I also am a big proponent is I hate that we shame people on social. Like even
Yeah.
if they are showing, you know, we don't know everyone's heart, we don't know their intent,
Mhm.
we don't know where they're at in life. And if you've really got to show everything, um, there's something deeply rooted that is
Yeah.
painful and then you're wanting some form of validation. It's hard because I think, a lot of us, we all want, validation in some point, right? In some capacity, we want to be accepted. Like it's an easy trap, I think, for any of us to fall into. But I see a lot of it on the flip side too of women calling out women. And
Mm.
that's just not me. It's just, it will never be me. It never sits well with me.
Mhm.
Um, when we start not having conversations and pointing fingers, um, it doesn't necessarily change people, I've learned, over the years in my life, and so I think the only thing is showing people his light and showing people true love and what his love can do for them and let them walk that journey to feel those convictions and make those changes, on their own. Um, so I mean, I know my journey, not that I was like I've had 4 kids, like, you won't catch me dead in a string bikini on social, unless I am dead and somebody that's what I'm in my coffin in. Um, but, like, it doesn't do any good, to shame people into it
Mm-mm.
either,
Mm-mm.
so,
Well,
you
that's
know
also the weapon of the enemy, right?
Mhm.
Like,
It is. I saw one the
that's
other
great.
day.
I'm in jeans and a t-shirt. What should I wear? Like
I know, I'm like, "Should I just do muumuus
a
now?" Like,
robe? Yeah.
I can't you can't
Yeah.
win. You can't win even if you had no intent or, anything like that. I'm like, you just as a woman, it's like, golly, you cannot win, and
Oh, yeah.
some women are curvier than others, and some are, "Oh, she's too skinny," it's just like, it's so much. Um, we just have to love people and let them start to have those conversations one on one. If anything, we'll see it get worse.
Mhm.
Unless just as women and as men, we have convictions to start changing how we show up, um, on social and what we share and, you know, or the porn industry and OnlyFans industry is just removed, right? It's taken
Mhm.
down. There was some big wins I saw from Facebook, with, like, child exploitation and some lawsuits and things like that, so, like, to me, there are people fighting some of those battles, um, and so we have to continue to use our voice to speak up for those things where they need to change, because there are some, like I said, it's just you at the beach in your bikini versus whatever some of these images are that I've seen, I'm like, that's 2 different things, right?
Yeah.
Even if
One,
you're at
Yeah.
the
yeah.
even if you're at the CrossFit gym and you're working out or I'm laying across a bed, like, those are
Yeah.
we got
Mhm.
2 different things, um, going on here, and so you kinda have to look at the environment too, and so
Right.
those are where I'm like, "Okay, we need those things just need to be removed
Well,
completely."
and this is like I struggle with this of what Aaron kind of mentioned is this idea of it's like false empowerment that there are so many women and men who will say that this OnlyFans pornography kind of thing is empowering. I have a really hard time believing that that's actual true empowerment. That might just be where I'm at.
Well, I don't think so because this kind of leads me to the next point. Like something that you said is to you, empowerment is your value under God, and that's the point. Without
Mhm.
God's word, then there's no end. We just make our own decisions, and our own morality is
Mhm.
decided by us. And so this is where the false truth comes into it because everybody has a truth. So the people on only like everybody has a truth. I say it in inverted commas, but the people on OnlyFans, their truth is that this is empowering. Hitler had a truth. Like yeah, they have their version of truth, but without somewhere to look, with if you're not putting something above you, and then you will come up with your own morality, and that's why like we should be like we should be considering the Bible as above, and not like pointing down and not finding parts of it. Like it is our governing
True.
context, and without that, without God, you would just come up with your own morality, and then all of a sudden, it's totally fine to be on OnlyFans because society pulls God away, and then we
Yeah.
just make up our own rules.
Yeah, 100%, and I think we often, in any capacity, we tie empowerment to if I have the money, if I have the success, and I can make the decisions, right? I can make all the calls, I have the power. I think we interchange power and empowerment, but they're
Mm,
really
Mm,
not the same thing. And you're thinking, okay, I have the power, so I'm empowered to do whatever I want. I can make the calls. Nobody has something above me. I think what we have to realize is the Lord does. And so we've seen it. I mean, I've seen on social numerous times women coming out of OnlyFans being like, I like this isn't fulfilling me. And I saw it in the same way as I chased my career and I chased that success, and was making great money. And I'm like, this doesn't fulfill me. You think it does, or it's
mhm.
going to, and then you kind of get there and what's next? Like you're never at that pinnacle. And so I think that's what they've tied it to is that I have the power, so I'm empowered to do whatever I want and I can just buy what I want and like I don't have anyone over me. But ultimately, I think then you realize, like, I don't have the Lord and I don't have
mhm,
my self-worth and, I've given away pieces of me, like your body and I think anyone that's been sexually assaulted, like something was taken from you that you cannot get back that you did not
mhm,
willingly give. And so then I think on the flip side, if I'm willingly giving that, just yeah, like, what value did it have to me, and why was I not giving it any value just to freely give it to whoever, that you want? Like, you hear of that. I mean, there was some girl, wanna sleep with so many X amount of men, in, like, 24
Yeah,
hours, and I'm like, "What
Oh,
are we
it was a
yeah.
doing?"
thousand.
Yeah, I'm like,
The
"What are
number was a
we" like,
thousand.
That
wha
breaks my
like,
heart.
why? Like, why? But, like, what why are you doing that in a way that, like, that just means nothing to you?
So
Like,
there's
what
two of
has
them. The
happened
two,
in your life that you feel like that is just a meaningless piece of you that you should just give out?
It's heartbreaking. Like, it really Aaron told me about that one day, and it just it broke my heart.
and there's two of them. The two British girls, but I recently heard, and I can't remember which one. But I recently heard that one of them have just turned their life over to Christ, and I don't know if that's a publicity stunt or what, but I hope that's true.
Yeah.
It gives a
I mean, you're
chance. And
seeing it. There's the one girl that was
yeah, there's
OnlyFans.
a real
Yeah.
famous one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's adorable. But and you see that, and then that's the same thing, though. The Lord, what the enemy meant to use to destroy, the Lord can use, for beautiful things, and I think of Rahab, that's one of, like, my
Mm,
favorite since I
me
read the
too.
Bible front to back, I'm like, why did we never talk about this in church? I don't remember, and just
Same
thinking
as
about
I love Boaz, and no one talks about Boaz.
yeah, like, Rahab's my that's my girl. Like, she's my favorite. Like, she was a prostitute and she was in the lineage of Jesus. Like, what? Like, he can use anyone, and your story doesn't define you, but your obedience to him does. And so,
Yeah, that's
like,
good.
I feel that, in all of these girls' stories and anyone that does OnlyFans and all of these things, they're looking for something. Um, and you think things of the world are going to fulfill it, and it never ever will. And, that's if this one woman wants to go and do that in 24 hours, like, that's her choice. But what I worry about and the stories I hear are the young girls that feel like this is the new standard,
Yeah.
Mm.
or the fact that we don't realize how much the porn industry fuels the trafficking industry and how they are so interconnected. And we get all upset with Jeffrey Epstein and they want people thrown in jail and everything, but I'm like, but yet we still fund these OnlyFans and this porn industry that is helping fund and causing them to take younger girls and, traffic and do all these things. Like, it's interwoven, and those are the things that need to be cut off so we can get a handle on this trafficking and these kids that are, I mean, we're babies. I mean, come on,
Well,
people.
what something that you said that struck me is this place in Phoenix you toured had a facility for 4 to 11-year-olds
I mean,
who
and
have been
I've
victims.
heard stories of infants. So, like, those aren't developed enough humans to remember the trauma, if they've
Mm.
survived that. There was a lady, my friend sent me a story. I don't know if she was a witch or something in Mexico. I mean, they were literally like having people have babies so they could take them. So, like,
Mm.
when you start getting into like the actual evil and darkness, like, it's disgusting. But yeah, it's children. It's children.
Well, and pretending like it doesn't exist isn't gonna help anything. So
No, but it's the easiest way. I mean, I remember when I went to see Sound of Freedom and there was people walking out of the movie, which I get it. Like, I get it. It's hard to you don't wanna hear it, but we have to stop not hearing things so that way
Yeah.
we can stop it. Like, we've gotta stop turning a blind eye to what's actually happening. And that's where I kinda get frustrated is because they want people thrown in prison, not that they don't deserve that necessarily, but it's still going on, and we're so worried about Jeffrey Epstein that we're not talking about, like, yeah, it's happening in your backyard. Like, there are
mhm.
Yeah.
literal there's families trafficking their own children. Like, it's actually happening in every city across America, and so it's super frustrating to me that, it becomes like the hot topic for like a hot second and then it's gone. And
Well, and it can
yeah.
be politicized to
Yeah.
say,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is the kind of person I am because I don't like Jeffrey Epstein."
Yeah. Or I don't
It's
like
like an
Trump. And
easy yeah, it's
yeah.
like an easy way to sh to kind of socially signal who you are without actually doing anything.
You think there's
Yeah.
also a level of that we see this quite often. I see it probably a little bit more in America than I used to see it in Australia, but I don't know if it's changed. But Americans want to tie a bow on things, even if it's not the answer. And so, as long as we got somebody for JFK, we're happy. As long as we got somebody for Charlie Kirk, we're happy. As long as we can put Jeffrey Epstein in prison, we don't have to think about the child, the rest of the industry that still is occurring. And it's almost like this. If we just find out who was involved with Epstein, then this has all gone away and we can stop thinking about it. But the fact of the matter is, like, that's just like the tip of the iceberg.
I mean, we have, like, Hollywood. I get on this too. There's, like, big Hollywood movies or shows. I never watched this show called, it's, like, with high school kids, and someone had told me it's, like, really pretty messed up. What's Euphoria.
I'm
Have you
not,
heard of this show?
no, I
I've
don't
Okay.
heard
watch
of
a
it. I
lot
didn't
of
watch it.
TV
So,
anymore.
I've never seen it, but someone was telling me about it, and it happens all the time, where grown adults are watching movies or television shows involving high schoolers having sex. Like, it's so odd, and it's so socially acceptable.
We didn't realize through everything that we were actually being groomed. And we saw it within the last few years with the Balenciaga ads that came out. is there is going to continue to be a test of what we can handle as a society, right?
Mm-hmm.
As we continue to allow more sin and allow the enemy to take over. So they're showing these stuffed animals and these children S&M stuff, and people exploded. And so it's kind of like, okay, they're not ready, but we're going to kind of push and we'll push the teenagers in movies and those kind of things. And so we've kind
Mm,
of been groomed for a really long time to accept these things. And so if
yeah.
we accept that, the rest isn't as big. Like people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone assumes every state is 18 and over. That's not the
No.
case. And so I've told that to a few people and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, there's things going on, and laws that there are within states that people just don't even realize are actually happening because there's so much money and power on this trafficking,
Yeah.
um, this industry and these satanic things that go on that it's controlled. And so they've groomed us in a lot of ways as to what they've allowed us to see, and
Yeah.
know. And
Desensitized us.
yeah, but if they release some of it, like they're going to make us think like, oh, here's the bow, we got it taken care of,
Mm-hmm.
because you really don't understand the capacity to actually what's going on. And I don't think a lot of people could actually handle the capacity, of how deep and dark these things actually go.
Yeah.
I've been down these rabbit holes. It's pretty crazy. It's almost overwhelming, and I have to kind of pull myself out because sometimes you just start going down rabbit holes and it
It's a lot.
doesn't. It's a lot, but like, what good does it do? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't take on the whole world necessarily. I can't, but I can start here, and I think that's where people need to, what is going on in my neighborhoods, what is actually fueling trafficking, and get down to some of the basics. Or if you don't, like, donate to the organizations. Tim Tebow's a great one, A21's a
Yeah.
great one, that are out actually fighting it. I've listened to Jaco Buens, I'm gonna say his last name wrong. His sister was trafficked out of South Africa. Her testimony is incredibly powerful as to what actually happens in the music industry. And I think it's the same in Hollywood as to um, there's so much connection with all of it. And for me, I don't listen. My music has changed. The shows I watch have changed because I've realized the truth, a lot of what's going on behind the scenes. And it's hard to give those things up. I think we're also very innocent, not saying everyone, is doing anything and watching these things or listening to things. But when you start to hear the truth behind some of it, um, you can't listen to it the same or watch
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
it the same anymore. I listened to a podcast last year, I wanna say, of a witch, and there was a show on, and witches were actually calling the producers saying, "You need to stop because you're putting spells, like actual spells in people's homes, and you don't know what you're doing." And I was just kinda like, and these are, like, practicing witches trying to warn them.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of those things that we don't understand the capacity of what Hollywood's doing, and the things that are truly going on, and where the enemy is trying to get into our homes and disrupt our lives. There is an actual I had this conversation with my kids because they'll tell me I'm crazy sometimes, which is fine. They're my kids. They should think
Oh,
I'm
my
crazy.
kids tell me that all the time.
But
Yeah.
we had a really good conversation, a conversation I didn't have when I was a kid about spiritual warfare and about light versus darkness. I mean, my one son was like, "Can I get Spider-Man powers? Like, is this a
Sweet.
thing?"
I like that.
So we had to like have a little, joking, but we had to talk about the spiritual realm and like darkness and the things that are actually going on. I wasn't until I kind of started diving into some of that I kind of also, with those thoughts that are coming in and those things that are attacking me, I realize those are not from me. There is
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
literally a battle going on around me, and I've got to be able to and prepared to armor up and fight it in the capacity that I need to. And I know that's probably where we lose a lot of people in this podcast, but it's truth, and it's
Yeah.
something I just did not. I still don't fully wrap my brain around it, right? I don't know that we ever fully will.
No, I
Um,
don't know that we're supposed to. Like,
right. I don't know that we can handle it.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, even if you're very skeptical on some of that stuff, like I would challenge you, even if you're not a follower of Christ, but if you're kind of not believing what we're saying, I would challenge you to read the books of the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, maybe, but a few of those, like read that section of the prophets with with the thought that Babylon is modern day Hollywood or Hollywood is modern day Babylon, and then tell me that that's not exactly what Hollywood is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even like people kind of get baffled a little bit. They've seen about Jeffrey Epstein and this, they're eating children and things like that. Like people just kind of like, what? Like, no, like this is truth and reality.
Yeah,
And I think they like you've heard it in some celebrities like blood sacrifices and things that they're doing. Like this is the real deal, and there are practicing witches and those kind of things going on globally. Um, so I think the best way is to if you, like, question it, like, "Is that a real thing?" Is listen to some podcasts of, like, ex-witches and people that have been involved that have come to know Christ. I think that can kind of open people's eyes to, okay, somebody was doing that and was on the other side of it. I think it's hard for us when we've never been on that side or we don't
yeah.
think like that, to
Mhm.
realize, like, that's a thing. Like, I think we kind of, like,
Yeah.
get the little hocus pocus in our mind and think of that as opposed to my
Mhm.
neighbor, who looks totally normal, is playing with darkness, whether it's tarot cards and those kind of things, um, psychedelics, those kind of things. We just have to be super careful, as to what, doors we're opening for darkness because as
Mhm.
soon as that's opened, um, it's hard to say what will actually and can happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's wild. That world, I could talk about it forever.
Yeah, same, same. I've had some pretty and as my eyes have been opened to some and, like, I've grown and, understanding it more, I've had some crazy things happen, and they maybe happened to me and I'd been around them before, I just never noticed them, but I've had some crazy things, and I'm like, "What is going on?" Like, people in the grocery store, like, ranting things in my
Satanic
presence.
stuff.
Yeah, in my
Mm.
presence, and I'm like and our eyes, like, locking, um, like, I'm the only one noticing what's happening and everyone else is going on about their business. Like, weird things like that, that I'm just like, "Okay."
Well, that might be right, like, you're the light ranch, you're bringing the light, and darkness isn't gonna like that. There's gonna
Mhm.
be times where that's gonna really make that,
Which is
um, like, shine the light on the darkness, right?
yeah, which is so true. Like, since I've been on this journey, the resistance has definitely been heavy too. I mean, um learning more and more how to fight it, but the resistance has definitely come up over the last especially the last year, of things that are trying to even, like, the Wednesday of the summit, that Tuesday night and Wednesday, like, the enemy was coming, um, and, I had to stop and pray over it and pray over the women that the Lord's hand would be on getting everyone
Ooh,
there that needed to be there and um, yeah, you just start to see those things a little bit more, but you have to
Mm.
be prepared to fight them for sure. Otherwise, it'll take you out at times.
it's almost like Joby. Joby always says, like, if you're not waking up bloodied every now and then, you might not be in a fight.
Yeah, I think Anthony Paul Mitchell. I listened to something that he
He's good
said.
too.
Yeah, he said like that. Like, and I've told some of the girls that I know are going through hard times too. I said, if you were not feeling resistance and things like that, like, we should be worried.
Yeah.
But you're leaning towards God, you're heading in that direction, you are seeking him more, you're doing all the right things, and the enemy is losing his grip on you, and for that, he does not like it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's that verse in Matthew, that talks about, I think it's Matthew, but it talks about the spirit that leaves and comes back and the house is tidied up and then it comes back with 7 more. I think that was the verse that changed my view on spiritual warfare. Um, because you feel like, "Hey, I've healed. I'm over this. What's going on?" And well, it's because he came back with 7 more
Came back
spirits.
with an army. Yeah.
Yeah, to fight you, and so that's why it feels heavier. That's why you feel like you're drowning again. Um, but it's not you. I think that's the thing we have to remind ourselves, it's not you. You can get through this. You just have to lean on the Lord even more, and, he'll help you fight those battles.
There's something in that. Like, I think back to my childhood growing up. Um, we would have involved in a lot of fist fights with kind of like, we wouldn't call them gangs by any means, but people from different towns hated the other towns, and we fight quite often. And I think like if you got in a fight one on one and then that person just left, now's the time to be most concerned because
Mhm.
that's not the end of that. Like if they just leave, it's about to get a lot worse because, like
Yeah.
you said, they're
It
coming back with 7 or 8, and that's when it gets real. So
Yep.
a time where you don't want to get complacent and think the enemy's off my back. I've worked through this. I'm healed.
Yeah.
I'm good now, and I can cross that off and move on to the next. Because then, yeah, like you said, they're coming back with 8, and you're in trouble.
100%. Like, you just always have to be on guard, right? We have to guard our hearts, and we just always have to be prepared for battle because I see them sometimes, not always, but, I'll see it coming and I'll be like, "Huh, it used to work, doesn't work anymore," but, that would have taken me out for, like, 3 days before, but,
Mhm.
I had something a couple months back, and I was just like I was cooking then one day because I was, like, for, like, a week, I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, stressing, "What if this doesn't work out?" Like, all these things, and I was like, "I've made it through everything else. Why is this gonna be the one thing that does me in?" And I'm like, "It's not." Like,
It's not.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna be fine. We're gonna still go on. Like, even if you lost everything, you'll keep going. Like, things will, they always work out. They always work out, and there's a plan and purpose in all of it. So I think it's just reminding ourselves of that and being prepared for what comes our way.
It's awesome.
Mm.
Probably a good spot to leave it there. We'll let you get out of here. But just before we go, just let everybody know where they can find you, when they can support the ranch, what they can do to help, or if they need help, how they could reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to our website, thelight.ranchco.org. So there we usually put events on. You can donate. I mean, donations, money's never my favorite thing, but that's what helps us. We cover some of the women's spots to the summit. The more money I have, the more retreats I can hold and things that we can do to, help these women through hard times or give us the ability to, if someone loses their job or things, and there's something we can step in and provide support, or, women getting out of domestic violence situations, like all of those things, as women come to us in situations, obviously funding helps us help in any capacity as it arises, as the Lord brings to us. You can also find us on social, the_light_ranch. Prayers is always one way everyone can support. Just that whatever the Lord wants to do, with the ranch and a property, that is our dream to get into full time ministry. That's my dream. And be able to hold retreats that are focused on different traumas, trafficking survivors, um, veterans. We are taking a couple veterans to Hawaii. And so doing that hunt in July. So prayers for that. And then any companies that want to help in any capacity, I do a lot of collaborations and give people things to get them started in an outdoor activity. Also, some of these things people don't always have the funding to do. So I've
Mhm.
given like bows away. or people that have struggled in certain things, been able to like get them like training support and things like that. So all of that just helps us. But you can always just reach out. Um, we've got a little bit of a board, but kind of a one man shop for the most part. So yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Heidi.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Next time you're in Colorado, we try to get a meal.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that. Thank you guys so much for having me on. You're doing such wonderful things for him.
I mean, same. Like, I, if anyone's listening and wants a good social media follow, follow the Light Ranch. It's, I love your page and it brings me so much joy. It points to the Lord. It's beautiful.
Thank you. That's the whole point. Always I'm like,
Mm,
if any can honor him or somebody see him through me, that's all I hope for.
oh, you're doing great work.
You know,
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys.
thanks for allowing me to.